body. And once you become aware of what's happening in your body and mind, then you have access to the holy scriptures of Buddhism, which are never written in a book, but to be found out inside your own heart and mind. What feels correct and what feels obviously wrong. An example of that came up just when I was in Melbourne. I had to go travelling. My previous trip was to Melbourne, the Buddhist Society of Victoria, to help celebrate their Wesak. And there was a question came up, it was a Sri Lankan mother who was concerned about some of the criticism her daughter was receiving. Her daughter was a very fine woman who had studied well, a very competent young lady who finished a medical degree and was a practicing doctor, and eventually ended up as one of the only 3 people in Australia, so I was told, who can perform legally late-term abortions. Late-term ones, not early ones. And some people were calling her a killer, a murderer. And the work she was doing was, was she a murderer? Late-term abortions? Killing living beings, isn't that against our precepts as a Buddhist? This is not the early-term abortions, it's late-term, almost fully formed little beings inside the mother's womb. But the type of abortions that she was performing, she gave one example. What she had to do the week before was a 10-year-old girl who'd been raped and became pregnant. And many other people who'd been victims of sexual abuse at such a young age. And she was one of the 3 people who were approved legally to perform such abortions in some extreme cases. Yes, it was killing. It's against our precepts. So it says in the books. But I said, as they asked me for some advice, Ajahn Brahm, help. People respect you, and especially in the Buddhist world. So I said to them, well look, how I make my decisions a lot. Yeah, the books are important, but in the end you're mindful enough, really aware, to actually find out how it feels in the heart. Does that seem to be wrong to you? If you were in that position, what would you do? And I said that doesn't seem to be anything wrong there at all. It's a very unfortunate situation that's actually got to that place, but that's the reality, this is where we're at. And so, it feels the compassionate, the wise, the proper thing to do, certainly in that situation. And I use that as an example, exactly how we make decisions in life, how we have this morality, where the ethics actually come from. But it's against the precepts, people say. Yes, precepts are very important. They are what I call traffic lights. And traffic lights means that when it goes red, you have to stop. Most times. But if it happened that this evening I had a heart attack, and you put me in your car and took me to the hospital, please go through the red traffic lights. Save my life. But what would you do if you had someone had a heart attack in the back of your car? Oh, come up to a red traffic light. You wouldn't just go straight through immediately. You would say, this is danger. That's what red means, danger. It's not saying no. It says dangerous. So you would stop, have a look around, and if it was clear, you think it was safe, you would go through. Now that is what precepts are. That is what rules are. There is always those exceptions. Those precepts are there not to forbidden, if you go across that you'll get executed. Those precepts are there to make you really aware this is an incredibly dangerous place to be. But the final decision comes from something much more, something much deeper than a precept. That is where, especially if you have developed your own meditation practice, it comes from that deep intuition. But that deep intuition has to be checked. There's something which I was very inspired of when I first came across Buddhism. Yes, that intuition is there, but that intuition, that feeling inside, can be wrong if it's being infected, perverted, being controlled by one of four things. And this is where the Buddha's words called it for Agati, A-G-A-T-I. I haven't found a better word for that than the old Pali word for it, Agati. If you are coming from personal desire, what's in it for me? If you're coming from anger, ill will, if you're coming from stupidity, or if you're coming from fear, then don't trust that intuition, because it's being perverted. You can't really trust it if it's what I want, personal interest. Or if you ever have any anger or ill will, that will actually just show you what you want to see rather than what really needs to be done. Obviously, stupidity, when you haven't got the full picture, you don't really know what's going on. You haven't got the full message, so have to know what's possible, what the situation is. And lastly, and most importantly, you should never ever act out of fear. Fear so often makes you make wrong decisions. So the decision stands by itself. It's not what other people are going to say about you, even what the consequences are going to be for you. You make that decision and make it without fear.